Owning your own home is base camp for so many people, the camp from which they can take the opportunities, have their aspirations, have that security going forward. So that's why we're so determined to build 1.5 million new homes.
So are property prices going to continue to rise? Or will 2025 see a shift in prices as the markets begin to calm down? Well friends, that's what we're going to run through in today's video. With an uncertain economy, the number one question on top of every home buyer and investor's mind is around house prices. And I'll be the first to admit, I envisaged prices would have fallen, or at least calmed down. But here we stand heading into Q4 2024 with the average UK house price stuck at around £288,000 according to gov.uk. And if we look over at Zoopla, they estimate the average UK house price to be £266,400. And if we consider that the average UK deposit is just shy of 20%, sitting at 19%, this would mean people would need a minimum of over £50,000 just for the deposit. And that's not even taking into account their affordability. But anyways, let's look at some key points that have a significant impact on the property prices to try and answer our question. Starting off with low interest rates. It was only a few years ago we saw a surge in people getting on the ladder and taking advantage of low interest rates, oblivious to the fact that they were not the norm or average, and in fact a bit of a one-off. But with such a desire to get on the ladder, it saw many people get the maximum properties they could get at favourable loans, causing house prices in a time of money printing and uncertainty surge further north. And without getting too technical, I think it's crucial to show the real house prices over time when we factor in inflation, which has certainly been the forefront of many conversations as we've all seen our goods and services rise significantly. Now, one thing we can notice is that rates have crept up from the lows, which likely explains the levelling out of house prices when we look at the charts. And given that demand continues to rise and supply continues to fall by the wayside, there's not really much confidence for the average consumer that house prices will in fact fall to a more affordable price for them. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, my friends. Moving on, let's actually dive slightly into the supply and demand argument. One of the biggest factors driving prices up is the lack of supply in many regions. Simply put, there aren't enough homes to meet demand. Construction delays, regulatory challenges, and urban migration trends that have all contributed to this imbalance. And this is where the lack of building homes by those in charge is often swept under the carpet. And the blame, well, if you look at social media, it's solely on landlords. But let's park that conversation for another day. We have an issue here in the UK with home ownership. Which brings me on to a small article that I recently read online where it compared France and the UK. Now, with almost an identical population, France has around 37 million homes when compared with the UK's 30 million homes. And some might argue, well, France has more land available to build on. But if we consider that even in the UK, only 8.7% of its actual land is developed on, that may raise a few eyebrows for the average person. Now, in terms of what can be done, I do want to address this in a future video, where we'll also be looking at how the new Labour government will impact it too, so please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that drop. Next up, investors pushing up prices. Now I hear and read about this a lot. People hate the idea of people buying up housing stock when some aren't even on the ladder. Investors often see inflation and their money doing nothing in the banks and opt for a safe asset to at least preserve their wealth. Hey, I'll be honest, that's what I've done too. My money has almost always served me better bricks and mortar than it has in any of my current accounts. But whilst this happens, in well sought out areas, it certainly makes buying a property seem more difficult for the average person or families. So the world is different today. Now I see a lot more working from home vacancies and jobs. Most of my friends and family are working in their PJs and asking me to pop over for lunch, which was totally unheard of 5-6 years ago. Now, if you consider that your home is also becoming your workplace, it's understandable how this could drive up the demand for people to buy homes more suitable for this. An office, more space, and a better environment. And this pressure, especially in certain regional markets, has seen homes selling faster than ever, again impacting the price of property. Moving on, inflation and interest rates. Now, inflation sucks. And although if you just look at the figures, you'd think that UK is doing great with its inflation rate, which is currently sat at 2.2% in August 2024, compared with other major countries, the reality seems much further away from this. Because if you ask me, it just seems more increasingly difficult to get by on even the basics in this country. Our essentials have risen in prices that are hard to justify. Now listen, I have no problem paying more for a service or good if what I'm receiving has improved or has a greater quantity. But it seems we get worse service, less quantity, and pay a premium for that privilege. And without running down a rabbit hole into the reasons behind this, because you and I both know there's millions, inflation and interest rates are a common monetary policy tool that is used by those in charge. Banks are now hinting interest rates could be altered to combat inflation, meaning more expensive loans and potentially slowing the demand down. Location. Now, as a property investor, you've heard me scream location, 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 as it's generally key. And even when it comes to house prices as a whole, we have to recognize that not all markets are the same. Yes, some will continue to rise as the demand to be part of that area, either by living or renting there, is more favorable. But there are also many areas where prices aren't increasing, maybe perhaps stagnating or even dropping. So sometimes just being a bit more open to the possibility of other areas could get you that dream house sooner rather than later. Although I do appreciate it's much easier said than done, and moving away isn't always a possibility. Moving on, recession. Now, I like to make my arguments rather than sit on the fence. And similarly, I have no problem being wrong, as I have been many times, hence why I try and share all the lessons with you guys on this channel. I personally said in Q4 on one of my videos on this particular channel that we would see stocks and the S&P 500 hit all-time highs, along with risk assets like Bitcoin following suit. And actually that played out perfectly. I also said following this we would then hit a major recession. And I am still a believer in this. Maybe in the next 12 months, 18 months, when I come back and do another video, we will be part of the recession that I've been banging the drum about. Remember, timescales are always very, very difficult to predict. But in my opinion, there is only so many times you can kick the can down the road before you have to stop and face the music. And I just believe that in the future, the near future, things aren't going to be too great. Now, of course, with every recession, there's opportunities, and that'll be a video for another day. And if it does happen, it will also be interesting to see how house prices are impacted. Now, I can't say this is a guarantee of lower prices, because my final and most important point is one you need to stick around for. Institutional investors. Now, I was one of the first YouTubers to share this information with you many years ago, but there's a big plan at stake here. Take out the smaller man, blame them, get them to give up their assets, and let the big boys take over. Granger, Lloyds, and many others are buying properties like bags of crisps from underneath our eyes. And whilst we all sit here and complain and moan about the private sector, the future looks like, well, we'll all be eating from the hands of the larger corporations. And if you think your landlord is bad, well, you're not going to enjoy living under those big players. There won't be any sort of human or emotional negotiations. Prices of rents will be controlled by them, whether that's a monopoly or oligopoly. And my worry is that, well, the conspiracy theories who have always claimed own nothing and be happy will actually be right once more. But anyways, friends, if you stuck around to this point, I just want to say thank you. When you could have been doing anything, but you chose to spend a few minutes with me. And that makes you pretty awesome. So until next time, thanks for watching.